Hey, how's it going everyone? And well, let's do what I do best and talk about some lost characters. Characters that have been missing all throughout media such as video games, TV, and movies. It's me, your host Zeep, and well, let me just say, I'm incredibly thankful to say that we've hit 100,000 subscribers. That's just so surreal to me, and I'm so appreciative of you guys. Like, seriously. I have way more to say, but I'm just going to wait for that until my annual year in review video, which you should check out. These things are insane, they're like movies. You should watch it when it comes out. So subscribe if you haven't, and like this video. Let's get to 5,000 for this one. Let's get started. Nestor. Guys, I know I was born in the year 1999, but I'm not really a 90s kid, I'd hate to break it to you. So when it comes to 90s nostalgia, such as the Nintendo Power, I gotta be honest, I'm not well too acquainted with it. Despite this, I did like that angry video game nerd episode of Nintendo Power, so I guess we'll use that as a resource.
If you had a subscription, you were the man. One of your friends will be breaking their balls to beat some game and you'll be like, oh, I know how to beat that game, or I know a code. That's because you had the power. Nintendo Power, motherfucker!
Listen, I get it. I tried playing some of these games while using like no walkthroughs to try to get that true 1980s vintage style, but about 1 hour into Legend of Zelda for the NES, I was just wandering around being like, what the hell am I doing? So of course I needed a walkthrough to actually play the game. When it came to Nintendo Power, it was basically the Bible for 1980s and 1990s kids. So yeah, you get it. Nintendo Power would basically be used as a guide to get you through multiple Nintendo games. But Nintendo Power was actually so much more than a walkthrough. For one, they had some weird-ass ads that were like really disgusting for no reason. And I know this is a segment straight from the Angry Video Game Nerd video, but really, what were they doing here? The ad reads, "It's easier to eat 4 pounds of cafeteria meatloaf than beat someone who reads Nintendo Power." You know, I get it. It's supposed to show that the average Nintendo Power reader is like really based and awesome. But this is just disgusting. Why would you show this as soon as you opened the magazine? Not only did Nintendo Power have some disgusting ads, but it actually had comics, original comics, which looking at them in retrospect were well illustrated and added a lot more character to all these video game characters. Seriously, there's a lot of good reaction material here that you can just spam to your friends. Like this picture of Yoshi looking incredibly menacing, how horrifying. But I think I might be getting too carried away reminiscing about a past magazine that I wasn't even old enough to read. Because we have to talk about today's subject for lost characters. Nestor, from Howard and Nestor. He was basically the mascot of the entire magazine, from 1988 to 1993, eventually being phased out in 1994. And I say this in the most non-offensive way possible. He was definitely a product of his time. The comic strip followed the stories of two characters, Howard, based off the president of the Nintendo fan club of the time, Howard Phillips, and a stubborn teenager by the name of Nestor. The following comics would entail of Nestor trying to get through various points of NES games. Nestor would often see himself in various games, including Mega Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Super Mario Bros. 3, and a lot more iconic Nintendo games that you still remember today. And according to Howard Phillips, Nestor was representative of, well, the average late 80s to early 90s teenager obsessed with Nintendo.
NES, of course, NES, NES tur, goofy stuff. We thought we were so clever. People ask me who, is Nestor real? And I said, yeah, he's you. He was every kid back then was Nestor.
Eventually, Howard Phillips left Nintendo, leaving Nestor to have his own comic strip all by himself, which continued for 3 more years with success. However, he was eventually phased out in 1994, but not without leaving with his own video game, Nestor's Funky Bowling, released for the Virtual Boy, which if you didn't know, the Virtual Boy is infamous for being a really terrible system. This game was released in 1996, about 2 years after Nestor was done being the mascot for Nintendo Power, and it did not help selling any more Virtual Boys, because that system sold terribly. It's a fairly obscure game, but from the comments I have read, people have defended this game by saying it's actually pretty fun. I mean, it looks kind of fun. I really like when you get a strike in this game, and then you just are greeted with this animated segment of a turkey. That's pretty cool. He actually has a pretty small cult following, so much so that people were wishing for him to appear in the latest Super Smash Bros. Installment as a newcomer. That didn't end up happening, but it would have been pretty cool if his moveset was like a combination of various NES games. Like, I don't know, he'd use like Simon Belmont's whip or Mega Man's gun. I imagine like a diverse moveset of various iconic, classic Nintendo characters, making him a well-balanced and all-around character. For decades, Nestor would cameo in Nintendo Power every now and then. However, he would have his final appearance in 2012 in the final issue of Nintendo Power, in a fairly emotional and pretty awesome goodbye. In the final issue, we're greeted with a Nestor, now as a fully grown adult, reading the final issue of Nintendo Power. Nestor is revealed to have a son who is as into video games as he once was when he was a child. Nestor is overcome with sadness, knowing that this is the end of his favorite magazine, but his son reassures him that none of this has really come to an end. He'll always have the posters on the wall that he received from the various issues, and will always have all the magazines. With that, Nestor is satisfied and stands up with his son. Right before they go ahead to play some video games, Nestor takes one last look at his entire collection, before he shuts off the light in a chapter of his life. A sincere thank you to Jack, the Retromaniac, for recommending Nestor, and on to the next character. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about private internet access, the sponsor of this video. Listen, there's a lot of VPN services all around, but this one is the one I would say checks all the great boxes. Listen, as the internet becomes more and more prevalent, your data becomes more and more at risk. That's where private internet access comes in. Private internet access is the world's most transparent VPN provider. They hide your IP address and encrypt your internet connection, shielding your digital life from the eyes of your internet service provider. Not only that, but private internet access also comes with loads of entertainment benefits, working with all major streaming services, meaning you could access even more content. Not only that, but their VPN software also blocks ads, trackers, and malicious websites, protecting your data. Furthermore, private internet access is available for all platforms, including Windows, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and many more. Signing up for private internet access is also risk-free, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. By using my link, you guys can grab an 82% discount on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month. And you'll also get 4 extra months completely free. Once again, thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Max Goof. Continuing off the trend of talking about the 90s, Max Goof originated from the series Goof Troop, a series that would later springboard to 2 different movies, a Goofy movie and then an extremely Goofy movie. 2 films that meant so much to me growing up as a kid. However, if you really want to go far back, Max originally appeared in the short Fathers Are People. Yeah, even his 1950s design is a far cry from his 1990s design, which funny enough are products of their own time. In Goof Troop, Max, who's a child in this rendition, is often going on adventures with his dad, Goofy, which I find even more interesting that they decide to expand on the character as he became a teenager in a Goofy movie. A Goofy movie for me was one of the more quintessential father and son films, as it was about Max trying to deny his father's clumsiness. In Goof Troop, he seemed to be very close to his dad, but of course in Goofy movie, as he's going through high school, he wants to completely reject that entire sentiment. As a side note, some of the music in Goofy movie is like some of the best music in all of Disney history. The score is really a product of its time, especially some of the designs here. Seriously, I first watched this movie when I was like 4 years old, and around 18 years later, I still get the song After Today still stuck in my head. In a Goofy movie, he was trying to impress Roxanne, in turn sacrificing his relationship with his father. This idea of putting family aside is explored even further in an extremely Goofy movie, and where Max goes to college and wishes to fit in. At the same time, Goofy decides that he wishes to go back to school and be with Max once again, leading to Goofy hijinks and one of my favorite edited clips of any movie whatsoever.
I didn't mean for it to turn out this way, Max. I was just trying to get closer to you.
My best friend's gone because of you and your stupid racism. I hate you!
An extremely Goofy movie came out in the year 2000, but Max would appear yet again in The House of Mouse, but during his iteration when he was a teenager. Max would appear yet again in a Mickey Mouse Christmas special in 2004, but then would go missing for another 13 years, until the year 2017 when he just made a cameo appearance in the DuckTales animated TV show. Although Max has no lines, and is only shown in photos, it just shows the amount of care Goofy has towards his son.
And Max and I made a memory. That's just who we are.
Is it so wrong to want to be normal?
I reckon every family has their own normal.
For me personally, I'm a sucker when it comes to father and son relationships in media, and I think the forms of entertainment Max does appear in is really wholesome. You know, they're realistic as they can be for Disney, when it comes to father and son, and the fact that we see Max grow and learn to love his father more and more, and accept him for who he is something I've always valued. Despite this, Max has had no speaking lines since the year 2004, and personally I just find that unfortunate. I think it would be pretty cool if we get an episode where Max is well into adulthood and has a child, and where Goofy has to learn how to be a grandfather. I think that would actually be pretty neat. But if you actually want to talk about a lost character, one who we haven't seen, well, we gotta talk about Max's mom. Throughout the classic cartoons, Max's mom appears through various points. Although we never actually fully see her face, we really just hear her speak and walk around every now and then. We don't really know much about her besides her just sucking at driving. There's a misconception that in Goof Troop it's confirmed that Max's mom is dead, over a line that doesn't exist in which Max apparently says her mom is up there with the stars. Which is just fake, that line didn't happen. Disney has been asked about what happened to Max's mom, but they have replied back with no definitive answer, likely to leave fans to just speculate. Personally, although it isn't confirmed, I do think she passed away, which I believe makes the father and son dynamic between Max and Goofy even more touching, knowing that Goofy especially cares for his son after losing his wife. I hope we get to see the both of them together once again one day, because their dynamic is really, really touching.
Aw, Dad.
Boco. Guys, this is like insane to me. I had no idea, and no offense to these guys. I think they're all fine people, but this is like the most requested series probably ever on the history of Lost Characters. Thomas the Tank Engine. I mean, I liked it as a kid. I thought the trains were pretty cool, but I haven't really thought about it much else since, like, past the age of 7. And I get it, I've met a couple people who are really into trains. It's just not my thing. And I'm not trying to demonize anyone here, because I think the passion that goes to being a fan of something such as Thomas the Tank Engine is actually really awesome. So although a lot of people have recommended this character, and so many other Thomas the Tank Engine Lost characters, I'd like to give the credit for this one to Steamroller Studios on Twitter, who DM'd me about this Lost character. So Boco was first introduced in the mid-1980s, with his last appearance being in 1998, so it's been a while. So Boco is a diesel engine, who, from the clips I have seen, seems really kind. However, when it comes to those who aren't doing their job correctly, he then becomes pretty stern. But other than that, he's actually a pretty humorous type of guy. So just to warn you guys, I'm not gonna go to the specifics of certain trains and what they are, because if I do, I'm gonna sound like an idiot. Just know that Boco is a British Rail Class 28. And to simplify that, he's a green diesel electric engine train. Now, what does this mean for us? Well, when it comes to Thomas the Tank Engine, it shows the amount of care that comes to actually basing these off of actual engines. With that being said, when it comes to Boco's place in the TV series, fans were furious. You see, prior to Thomas the Tank Engine, there was a book called the Railway series, which first established all of these train characters. You see, in the book series, Boco was treated with respect by his fellow trains. Although serious and stern, he definitely had a soft spot, a position that he had to gain throughout the entirety of the first few books. Despite this, as the series went on, Boco's presence fizzled out. And here's the things about the other trains, and I think this is really more social commentary. Other trains would look down on diesel trains, they'd tend to mistrust them. Other trains were unsure of Boco until he turned out to be cool, and then they were just okay with other diesel trains. For example, in the book series, there's a social hierarchy. Certain trains are called steamies, and steamies tend to be, and I'm quoting the series here, better than dirty diesels. Boco serves as a representation of not to judge someone due to their original creed, to be true to oneself, and to defeat any expectations originally prescribed to you. Like the books, Thomas the Tank Engine began with Boco-centric episodes, but over time, they just went away. He became more of a side character until he just wasn't existent at all. In fact, his last appearance is this very small corner shot of him where you could barely see him. Yeah, it's clear they didn't really give a shit about him. Unless I did my research, I would never have been able to tell in a million years that he actually appeared in this clip. Not to mention, this is just a reused clip. This is stock footage. So get this, after the Thomas the Tank Engine movie just completely bombed, the 6th season of the show commenced. Fans were pissed that a lot of the side characters they grew to know and love just didn't appear in the movie, so they brought them back for the 6th season. Most of them except for Boco. So over the years, Thomas the Tank Engine has brought back many obscure characters, and as the show has transitioned into CGI, a lot of those characters have gotten the CGI retreatment. I see most of them except for a very special one, Boco, who has been treated like an afterthought from the series creators. In the years following Boco's disappearance, fans of the show have written fanfiction about Boco, writing him as the reliable, responsible individual that he once was. In this way, Boco's memory has been kept alive, with the fans clamoring for him to appear yet again. And at this point, I think one day it will happen, because if enough people talk about it, then I believe the creators of the show will at least pay attention to that. Doctor Marvin Monroe. Can you believe the last time I talked about the Simpsons in this series was in the first episode? When I talked about Graggle Simpson? We've come quite the long way since then. Dr. Marvin Monroe first appeared in the 4th episode of The Simpsons, titled There's No Disgrace Like Home. And honestly, it's a pretty interesting episode because it's so early in the show's run that some of the characters that we see in the show act pretty differently than how we see them later on. Interestingly enough, this was also one of the first appearances of the character Lo, who would appear as yellow instead of black, which apparently was an animation error. Interestingly enough, in the first 3 episodes of The Simpsons, Smithers was black instead of yellow, with this being the first episode in which he appears, well, as yellow. Now I do realize, when it comes to the family being displayed this way, it's for the sake of the episode's plot, but it's still kinda jarring to see how the family interacted in the first season of the show. I guess a comparison I would have would be like the first few seasons of Family Guy compared to what Family Guy is nowadays. Because back then, well, it was obvious to see that the family actually cared for each other, and nowadays they just all completely hate each other. Which, you know, I know it's Family Guy, who really cares, but I do kind of miss that. So Homer fears his family is becoming more dysfunctional, when suddenly a commercial appears on TV advertising Dr. Marvin Monroe's office. The entire family goes, and Dr. Monroe, well, his methods of therapy are interesting, as they include electroshock therapy. It doesn't work, and the Simpsons family even ends up upsetting Dr. Monroe, whose entire business is this entire thing. He would appear a couple more times in other episodes, with him even hosting a morning radio show in where he would help the citizens of Springfield with their problems. I mean, when it comes to Dr. Monroe, it's not really super exciting, I'll admit that right now. What is interesting is the aftermath of Dr. Monroe, and how the Simpsons have treated him as a character. In The Simpsons' 138th episode Spectacular, it is confirmed that Dr. Monroe died off screen. So what gives? Why'd they kill him off? Well, the voice actor for Monroe, Harry Schreier, stated that the voice was really more of a pain to put on and really hurt his throat.
Anything but soothing. And so I gave him this voice. And soon regretted it, of course.
Which, you know, is understandable. But not only that, Matt Groening, of course the creator of The Simpsons, thought Dr. Monroe was really just annoying, and had really no desirable, interesting personality traits to really keep him coming. This is where things start to get a little weird, because in season 15 of the show, Dr. Monroe returns to talk to Marge in a book signing, and where he's very much alive. It gets even more bizarre because about like a decade later, Dr. Monroe would come back again in a Treehouse of Horror, which I know it's not canon to the overall series, but he comes back as a ghost, thus like reinforcing that he is dead, which has become a gag in recent Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors that he's a ghost and, you know, he's dead. Which has also led to the Simpson writers to actually like pay attention to this, and I've even made a gag about this entire thing in like a little like corner joke where it questions whether or not he's actually dead. Did Marge actually see Dr. Monroe, or was it like an apparition that was something she only saw in her vision? So you're probably wondering, is Dr. Monroe even a lost character then? Should he be along these ranks? Well, you're probably right. Listen, I've gotten a couple comments to put Dr. Monroe on this list, and I've obliged because I think he's really interesting. For a time period, he was lost for decades on end. He was a retired character. He was put into that space a lot of these lost characters are put in. Except Dr. Monroe's fate is, I think, suitable with how the creators view him. He's really a pain in the ass, he's annoying. And when he is mentioned nowadays, it's really just to make fun of him. Now, there are fans of Dr. Monroe who thinks he deserves better. And to that I say, I don't know what else they could really do with his character. There's a reason why Matt Groening just thought he was just too boring compared to other characters with flavor. And considering the pain he does cause people who try to voice act him, probably better to just leave this guy in the past, considering that the voice acting for The Simpsons has gotten a little worse in recent years.
Oh, Skinner, who knew you were such a devil?
Well, I learned from the best. Or should I say the worst? So how do you turn the game dollars into real dollars?
Please, Simpsons creators, give these voice actors a break.
When the clock strikes 6:30, babe.
Mac Tonight. It's really all been leading up to this moment, huh? Another lost McDonald's character. Inspired by the song Mac the Knife, made famous by the singer Bob Dylan in 1959, Mac the Knight took inspiration from the famous 1950s singer and sang about the wonderful Big Mac, in an effort to try and turn out dinner crowds over to McDonald's. He was intentionally made bizarre, inspired by Mac's Headroom, who in turn was basically the new spokesman for the new Coke sensation hitting the mid-1980s. The Mac Tonight campaign started off in California, California and then expanded towards the rest of the West Coast, increasing dinner time sales by 10%, turning out to be a moderate success for McDonald's. As it related to the McDonald's campaign at the time, it was a more mature drift to the adult crowd, as Mac Tonight wasn't directly correlated to McDonald's land. As the 80s went on, McDonald's decided to go national with Mac Tonight, going on to become a bigger smash hit. So something that did help Mac Tonight succeed as well was that a Big Mac was 99 cents. You're probably thinking, well, with inflation that's probably way more. Well, it's actually $2.55 in 2022 money, so like, this was like a really good deal because a Big Mac now is like 10 bucks for a meal. So combined with an epic McDonald's meal and a really cool mascot, of course Mac Tonight was going to be a success. I mean, the next time we'd get a deal this great would be the Travis Scott meal in 2020. I'm still not over that. You think other mascots such as the Hamburglar or Grimace were insane? No, Mac Tonight was the guy. Sure, McDonald's land characters were successful, but Mac Tonight was accessible to everyone. He was this cool, slickly designed Moon Man. Not only that, but he was also nostalgic. He would sing these classic 1950s tunes, similar in the vein of the California Raisins. People loved this guy. There would be meet and greets for him. Everything seemed to be going in Mac Tonight's way, until the late 1980s. By late 1989, the son of Bobby Darin, Dodd Darin, sued McDonald's, claiming that the restaurant had infringed on the Bobby Darin song. Bobby Darin did not write Mac the Knife. It was a song that was covered over and over again. It was really a silly claim coming from the son. People believed that McDonald's could have won the lawsuit easily. The trouble was that the lawsuit would have continued for years. McDonald's decided that this wasn't worth it, that Mac Tonight had his time to shine, and that they would discontinue with the ad campaign. Throughout the 1990s, Mac Tonight would make rare appearances in McDonald's commercials, and animatronics of him would even be placed in certain McDonald's, and where he would play old retro songs from the 50s. Mac's final official appearance would be in the year 2007, in which he appeared in a Southeast Asian ad, advertising the Golden Arches one last time. Let me stress this, that would be Mac's final official appearance. In the 2010s, Max's entire character was flipped upside down. By 2007, message boards had taken hold of Mac Tonight and used computer audio to have him rapping over a beat. What would he rap about, you may ask? Well, racism. Mac Tonight would be renamed as Moon Man by these message boards, and his entire character would be changed to one who would align to a certain extremist political ideology. For me, the only version I knew about Mac Tonight for a time period was Moon Man. All the Mac Tonight ads were before my time, so every now and then when I'd be scrolling through the internet, I'd be greeted with the most edgy memes surrounding this Moon guy. Following the 2016 election, Moon Man was officially labeled as a hate symbol, with this Moon Man personality of Mac being removed all throughout YouTube as it was labeled as hate speech. And in September of 2019, the Anti-Defamation League added Moon Man to the database of hate symbols. In recent years, McDonald's has understandably distanced themselves from Mac Tonight, likely to never appear again, forever doomed as a lost character. Sure, Mac lives on as Moon Man, but let's be real here, that is not Mac Tonight. Although the Mac I was introduced to was Moon Man, the Mac I'd like to remember was the one who would be on the TV screens of the 1980s. I've been Zeepster, subscribe, I love you guys.